Introduction: why this trade war matters. The United States and China are the two largest economies in the world. Their trade relationship exceeds $650 billion annually. But beneath that enormous number lies a volatile mix of rivalry, mistrust, and strategic conflict. This is not just a tariff war, it's a battle over technology, ideology, and global dominance. Early cooperation, Nixon to WTO. The roots of US-China engagement go back to 1972, when President Nixon visited Beijing, opening the door to normalized relations. Over the next decades, the US supported China's economic rise, culminating in China's 2001 entry into the World Trade Organization. Washington hoped this would liberalize China. Instead, China doubled down on state-led capitalism. The China shock and trade imbalance. After China joined the WTO, American factories shuttered as low-cost Chinese exports flooded the market. Economists dubbed it the China shock. The US trade deficit with China ballooned to nearly $400 billion a year. Millions of manufacturing jobs vanished. And tensions around currency manipulation and intellectual property theft grew. Trump and the trade war begins. In 2018, President Trump launched an aggressive trade war. His administration imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of Chinese goods, citing unfair practices, forced technology transfers, and the massive trade deficit. China retaliated, targeting American agriculture, autos, and tech. Escalation and the Phase 1 deal. By late 2019, tariffs affected more than $360 billion of Chinese exports to the US and $110 billion of American exports to China. The Phase 1 deal in 2020 offered a temporary truce. China promised to buy more US goods and improve IP protections. But the COVID-19 pandemic derailed enforcement and tensions persisted. Biden's strategy: same game, new name. The Biden administration kept most Trump-era tariffs in place, but the strategy shifted. Rather than going it alone, the US began working with allies, from Europe to Japan, to contain China. New buzzwords emerged: decoupling, de-risking, and friends-whoring. The tech war and chip embargoes. The trade war morphed into a tech war. The US blocked exports of advanced semiconductors and chip-making tools to Chinese firms like Huawei and SMIC. In response, China restricted exports of critical minerals like gallium and graphite, materials vital to electronics and green tech. Supply chain shakeups in China Plus One. Tariffs and tensions forced companies to rethink their supply chains. Many adopted a China Plus One strategy, moving production to Vietnam, India, or Mexico. Meanwhile, the US invested heavily in domestic manufacturing, with subsidies for semiconductors, EVs, and solar. Impact on US consumers. American consumers have borne part of the cost. Tariffs raised prices on electronics, appliances, and household goods. Estimates suggest that trade war policies cost the average US household between $500 and $800 per year, without solving the root problems. Impact on US businesses. US companies that rely on Chinese parts or customers have been squeezed. Small manufacturers face higher costs. Farmers lost market share in China. But some sectors, like domestic chip making and rare earth mining, are thriving under protectionist policies. Impact on Chinese firms and consumers. In China, the trade war fueled efforts to become self-reliant. Chinese firms accelerated innovation in semiconductors, software, and AI, but economic growth slowed. Export-heavy industries, especially low-margin manufacturing, began feeling the pinch. Global businesses in the crossfire. Global firms like Apple, Tesla, and Volkswagen are caught in the middle. They want access to both markets, but are pressured by both sides to pick one. Supply chain complexity has increased, and geopolitical risk is now a major boardroom issue. More than trade, a struggle for power. This isn't just about steel or soybeans. It's a contest of systems, democratic capitalism versus authoritarian state capitalism. The trade war is now part of a wider struggle over who will dominate the technologies and rules of the 21st century. Technology, Taiwan, and national security. From 5G to quantum computing, the US and China are locked in a race. Taiwan, home to the world's most advanced chipmaker, is a strategic flashpoint. Any disruption in Taiwan's chip exports could crash global supply chains. The stakes are enormous. Trade blocs in the new economic order. As the US and China pull away from each other, the world is splitting into competing trade blocs. China leads RCEP, while the US courts partners through IPEF. Both sides are pushing for new rules, new currencies, and new supply lines. Can the trade war end? 3 possibilities. First, a cold peace. Tariffs remain, but open war is avoided. Second, a reset. The US and China negotiate a new deal. Unlikely, but possible. Third, escalation. The trade war deepens into a full-blown economic Cold War, or worse. Scene 17, what would it take to end it? A real resolution would require trust, reform, and compromise on intellectual property, tech access, and Taiwan. But right now, none of that seems likely. Both nations view each other as existential threats. The trade war may never truly end. Conclusion, a new normal. The US-China trade war is no longer a phase. It's the new baseline. A generational contest that will shape how we trade, innovate, and govern. Businesses and citizens alike must adapt because the rules of the global economy have changed.